Excellent. Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 4 of Cubewise Innovation Week 2026. My name is James Downey, and I've been your host for the week, and it's great to be back here with my fellow colleagues, Nicolás and Andrea. And also we have Stuart King on the line from IBM, Senior IBM Product Manager with Planning Analytics. So we are very excited to be here today as we talk about the different planning analytics deployment options. We're going to be talking about some of the best practices, some insights and lessons learned. And we're also really excited to have Stuart get on the keyboards shortly to kind of have a look at some of the new innovation and the technical leadership coming out of the planning analytics product management team, where he's going to be looking at IBM Bob and talking about the Team One MCP and kind of interacting with the Team One server that's on a PA SaaS deployment. So really looking forward to that discussion very shortly. But before we kind of kick off, just a quick friendly reminder. Please be, interacting in the chat. As much as possible, we want to make this an interactive webinar. So if you have any questions, any high fives, any comments, please do post them up, right? And the team will be kind of responding accordingly. And I guess kind of like, have a quick recap of the week because it's been a very busy and successful week so far with this webinar series, which is this is our third year of running Cubewise Innovation Week. And we're really kind of talking to existing customers about how to modernize, automate, and innovate their planning analytics deployments. With a variety of different toolings, best practices, and different kind of consulting techniques as well. So on Monday we had the 10th anniversary kind of kickoff with Marius, as we kind of talked about the Team One Pi 10th anniversary, which is really exciting. And we also released the new Atmosphere free tier, which includes RushTI 2.0, and which is to help better orchestrate the performance and the performance of turbo integrated processes. And Nicolás, who's on the mic today with us, will be joining us also on tomorrow as we wrap up Innovation Week to really kind of dive deep into RushTI 2.0. I think it's for anyone who wants to improve the performance of your applications, which I'm sure a lot of you do, or you're existing RushTI customer, or you're interested to learn about how to do these things better, please jump onto tomorrow's webinar. It's going to be great. And then on Tuesday we had a few of the team members talking about what's an integrating planning analytics with what's an orchestrate. We started kind of talking about the Team One MCP. We talked about agentic AI and some of the offerings that Cubewise is bringing into this space. And one of the kind of key themes that Andrea and the team were talking about, as you kind of go through your analytical journey with AI, try to you do need to be. We encourage you to kind of be doing something and kind of moving forward, and to start small. Start with an existing planning analytics process and iterate. Iterate on that, and then try to look to get some quick wins, and then kind of like grow through experience. But again, applying AI principles over some of your existing planning analytics workflows is a great place to start. So that was on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we had the release of the new version of Bedrock 5.3, and we had the team on there talking about the development lifecycle of Bedrock. We were also talking about the upcoming roadmap, and also talking about the importance of testing, regression testing, unit testing, and how some of the Cubewise products, the Test Hub as a function of Pulse and Arc, how we are using that increasingly with our kind of testing and deployments of Turbo Integrator and rules as part of model development. And we did a lot of that, extensive testing around Bedrock. And we were looking to accelerate the release of Bedrock over quarterly releases. And as part of that, as we accelerate the innovation with Bedrock, we want to kind of accelerate the testing as well. So that's kind of been the week so far, and I'm really excited to be here again today with the team. And so as I said, please be posting up in the chat, and looking forward to kind of chatting with you there. So again, Stuart and Andrea and Nicolás, great to have you here. I hope you're all doing fantastic as we kind of like talk about a very important and topical subject, deploying planning analytics in the variety of different ways we can deploy planning analytics, right? And so Stuart, a bit kind of down your lane. I hope you're doing well. And I know as a bit of a setup, I know a lot of the people on the line already know kind of a bit about your role, but you want to just kind of like touch on what you do with planning analytics and IBM, and your important role there, And I guess also given that we're celebrating the 10th anniversary of Team One Pi, and your global view of planning analytics, it'd be interesting to hear about what you're seeing, and seeing some of the success and influence that Team One Pi has had over the community over the last 10 years. So yeah, it'd be interesting if you want to share a little bit about that.
Have everything to share, yeah. Yeah, really quickly, a bit about my role at IBM. I'm one of the senior product managers on the product management team for planning analytics. I've been in this role for almost about 8 years and about 15 years in total on TM1 and planning analytics. At this point, it sort of feels like I'll do almost a little bit of everything within planning analytics. But one of the things that is sort of most important in my role is actually managing the different offerings or products that we call planning analytics, right? Because planning analytics, it's not just one product. We have planning analytics local, we have planning analytics on cloud, we have planning analytics SaaS, our newer kind of modernized variant that runs on AWS and Azure. And then, of course, we have planning analytics advanced certified containers as well, which is our hybrid cloud product, which can be run on the cloud or on-premise using containers to deploy a fully modernized kind of variant of planning analytics. So part of my role has been kind of the management of getting these offerings or these products up and running. I do have a counterpart on the cloud and SaaS side, Tracy Pepe, which I think a lot of people know. Tracy. She kind of manages the SaaS offering, but under the covers, I sort of manage a lot of the, almost like the feature development that we do to make these products possible. And then I completely own things like the certified containers product. So within IBM, like if you need someone to actually get a new product released and out the door with existing software that IBM owns, and it's something to do with planning analytics, it's typically going to be me that's sort of leading that process and working with our design development and release teams, our legal teams, our QC teams, support teams to make that happen. Basically the coordination of full releases or new variants of products at IBM. So that's a little bit about me and what I do, or sort of the more important part of my role. Remind me, what was the second half of the question there?
And the second half of the question was, obviously, your global role, and you've been working with it for a while, and the influence and success that you've seen with Team One Pi, right, as an open source utility. I mean, for myself, who's been in this space, like similar kind of time frame as yourself, right? There definitely been in my humble opinion, a really kind of exciting innovation and occurring around the Pythonic ways of planning analytics. So just curious from your viewpoint, how it's looking.
My view of TM1 Pi is it basically solves every problem that ends up not being solved by planning analytics itself, right? Like if there's something you can't do in planning analytics natively, like that the product itself doesn't have that functionality, that's where we end up seeing TM1 Pi step in and do something very useful. And it's so varied what that is, right? So I think a couple of years ago, it was primarily things like data science use cases, right? Like being able to do forecasting above and beyond the forecasting that we built into the product, right? Or just bridging the connection between data and planning analytics and data science tools. Now we see more than that. We see even some customers who are replacing the ETL capabilities that we have built into the product, through Turbo Integrator scripting language, just completely with TM1 Pi. And I think the reason that this has been so successful, or TM1 Pi has been so successful, is its ability to kind of bridge with other services and other data sources, right? Just as a point of reference, like I spend a lot of time looking at other products that get onboarded into IBM. Of course, within IBM, there's a lot of non-organic growth. We acquire a lot of companies, and when we do, we typically take a look at their software, and we start to think about how we could interact, right? How we could bridge what other software and services teams are doing with planning analytics, and how they could leverage planning analytics. More often than not, the problem that we sort of come up against is that other services don't commonly know how to talk to planning analytics. They know how to talk to relational databases, that's very common, but they don't know how to talk to cubes, and they don't know how to use MDX. TM1 Pi becomes really important, right? Because it's the thing that can actually bridge the connection, right? It through its data frames, I think it's Panda's data frames that it uses, it can basically query data, get data in and out, and turn it into basically a table that any other application can use or any other service can use, right? So anytime we start to look at integration use cases, and it's another tool we want to integrate to that doesn't understand MDX or doesn't understand what a cube is, it's like TM1 and Python is there to kind of save the day. It's what bridges those connections, and I think that's what makes it so successful.
Yeah, it's a nice. I appreciate your kind of viewpoint there. It's really kind of it's really important, right? I think as an open source initiative, and we've definitely seen a lot of like momentum and innovation, right? As you said, like it's that bridge, and to kind of again to extend planning analytics. I think working with a lot of enterprise IT based customers, there's sometimes that how do we integrate and scale and more automation that you would typically see. And I know, Nicolás, maybe you want to make a comment as well, as you're part of the Team 1Pi Council there. I guess, how have you seen like Team 1Pi, expand over the years and the innovation from your perspective? And then maybe across to Andrea when we'll get back to the deployment options here.
Yeah, I think Stuart pointed out is generally is exactly the point, and that's probably the reason why I started using Team 1Pi as worked in a prior pharma company where we went actually probably one of the first that were into the cloud, and there were many things that we needed to be bridged, things that we couldn't do locally anymore, and that's where Team 1Pi came up to me as something that could actually do that. And I think being open source, it's again, this what Stuart mentioned is something that we all face, and that's why you see people contributing. We have like more than 50 by now, trying to all of us put a grain of salt, saying, okay, this needs to be covered, this needs to be there. The ETL progress that we've seen, like from just trying to put some numbers in cubes to almost being on par to TI processing, it's fantastic, and that has been driven by the needs from different customers and developers around the world.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. There are quite a lot of community-based contributions there over the years with planning analytics and Team 1Pi. And I know Marius kind of made a couple of shout outs there about the contributions on Monday. But yeah, I think we're going to see kind of continued innovation around that space. But kind of like kind of pivoting back to deployment options. Andrea, one of the kind of key things here that we talk about with customers, there's quite a bit of optionality here for kind of deploying workloads with planning analytics, and I think that's a competitive strength compared to some of the other EPM providers such as a OneStream or an Anaplan and the like. We have more options. And you can definitely see, and we've talked about it, and we see this quite a lot on the sales side, right? IBM's strategic investment in planning analytics in their sales teams and also in their product side of things and all the R&D and investment. Obviously, there's always things that could be better, clearly, but it's seen some really good progress over the last 5 years in particular. But if you want to kind of share a bit about, what are the deployment options that Stuart was touching on, we've got a slide there to show. And what are you seeing here from a customer perspective, some of the things they're considering when deploying planning analytics in the cloud?
Yeah, no, thank you for that, James. Once again, Andrea Ludwig, sales manager here at Cubewise. And the thing I'll say, and James just kind of touched on this, it is, someone who works with this tool on a regular basis and talks to lots of different customers on PA or exploring using planning analytics. It is really exciting to see all the investment that IBM is putting into it, the constant changes and updates on the roadmap. So it's really awesome to see that. And that's to James's point and what Stuart said earlier, all the different deployment options. There are some people need to be on-prem for certain reasons, other people cloud first. In general, we do see cloud being that trend. And Stuart touched on the kind of the 4 main deployment options. So I will share my screen and ask him to kind of go through in a little more detail, because it is a little confusing. There isn't just one option, which, as James said, this is to our competitive advantage.
It would make my life a lot easier if there was one option, but there.
Yes, and it also goes back to kind of all that, the investment that IBM's to make sure that we have these options. It's not just one way. So yes. So, Stuart, if you want to talk to a little bit about the different options that people have, maybe some of the things they should be considering. The other thing, as you just kind of even mentioned Team 1Pi, if something can't happen in PA, what are the other, areas of development? I know MCP is a big thing. I know you're going to go through that a little more detail, but even kind of tying that into some of this would be helpful too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So this slide is a pretty important one that we actually show as part of our roadmap, or usually before we kind of get into our roadmap, because it is important to understand that we have a lot of different deployment options to kind of suit whatever needs, right? Some of our competitors are SaaS only. Some legacy solutions are on-premise and they never got ported over to be SaaS or cloud. But basically, you could think of this, our 4 different offerings almost as a quadrant, right? We support on-premise and we support cloud. That's kind of one way to divide up our products, right? Our on-premise products being either advanced certified containers or planning analytics local 2.1. Although it's a bit weird to say certified containers is on-premise because that's not strictly true. You could deploy it on a cloud provider, right? The other way to sort of divide up these offerings, and why I say this is kind of a quadrant almost, is there's IBM managed and then there's customer managed offerings, right? So planning analytics on cloud and planning analytics SaaS are IBM managed, right? We don't necessarily manage the solutions. We're not providing the models and the applications and the solutions. That's what our business partners like Cubewise really excels at, and they provide those expertise. But we manage the platform, right? We manage the services, we keep them updated, we keep them secure, and running and update the hardware underneath them, right? So we can think of cloud and SaaS as really, IBM managed, whereas certified containers and local is really customer managed, right? So we can be managed or unmanaged. We can be on the cloud or not on the cloud, right? And then the other way to think about this is modernized or kind of we don't like to use the term legacy or classic, but that's almost what it is at this point, right? Planning analytics SaaS, planning analytics advanced certified containers. These are our modernized offerings, right? In fact, what a lot of people probably don't know is that under the covers, these 2 modernized products, SaaS and certified containers, are basically the exact same set of modern services. Both of these include the exact same TM112, the exact same variant and almost configuration of planning analytics workspace, the exact same set of modernized web sheet services for our customers building content in Excel and consuming it on the web. And then, of course, the exact same Excel add-in as well, right? So the really neat thing is, whether you're deploying advanced certified containers and managing it yourself, on-premise or on a cloud provider of your choice, like AWS or Azure, using some form of Kubernetes, or you're leveraging planning analytics SaaS, you're actually running the same set of services, right? This is beneficial to basically everyone because our team only needs to build something once. We need to build our services once and then deploy them to two different products. I think the other thing to talk about here is what is the actual difference besides containerization for our modernized offerings, SaaS and certified containers, and the classic offerings, local and cloud. Probably the biggest difference or the most noticeable one is that our modernized offerings use TM112. TM112 is basically our version or our release of TM1 that's made for cloud native releases, right? So it trades off all the dependencies you might have on a system level integration, right? It removes all the dependencies on the actual computer that is running the TM1 database, and instead provides the ability to do things like service to service integration, right? So in reality, this means we drop things like the execute command turbo integrator function, but then we gain the ability to do service to service connections from turbo integrator with our new execute HTTP request function, which is a really interesting area of the product. But why do we want to drop these sort of dependencies on the system and start leveraging service to service dependencies? For a whole lot of reasons. Number one, it allows our product to be a lot more scalable. We can increase the number of replicas, do high availability of the database without having to consider, what system the replica gets deployed on, right? So we can finally scale properly. It allows us to be portable, right? We can move our deployment of a TM1 database from one data center to another without having to worry about any of the dependencies on the underlying architecture or infrastructure in one data center or the other. It also allows our customers to move from on-premise to cloud or from one cloud to another cloud without having to do things like rework their model and think about all the kind of system level dependencies that might exist. Right, so a lot of advantages to modernization. It is a bit of effort required. Most of that is realized through the update from TM1 11 to 12, and 12 being the sort of key component that you need to account for when you modernize to SaaS or certified containers.
Maybe just to jump in there with that, we have a lot of customers there, and thank you for that. A lot of customers who, for example, it might be on a large installation on premise, and they're kind of like, and they're starting to consider moving to the cloud in the next 6 to 12 months. And they, there is that kind of question about, which cloud, which is a really interesting question right now about, is it a planning analytics on cloud or is it planning analytics as a service? Given the timing of it. And I think from what, what I'm seeing, some of the maturity of the planning analytics as a service is, as you said, it's the modern kind of platform version 12, as you said, and it's maturing quickly. But for existing workloads that are on planning analytics, on-prem, which way they go? Do they go planning analytics on cloud or planning analytics as a service? And it's not an easy answer necessarily.
No, it's really not. Yeah. So let me say this. It's definitely easier to go from an on-premise deployment to planning analytics on cloud. And that's simply because planning analytics on cloud is more or less a hosted version of planning analytics on premise, right? The workspace portion of the offering is multi-tenanted and it's a proper as a service delivery. But under the covers, the TM1 databases are still being hosted, and they're actually just being hosted on either Windows systems that are bare metal or VM, which is really, at the end of the day, not that much different than how our customers would deploy and manage the servers running TM1 databases on premise, right? So this obviously makes the lift and shift to cloud from on-premise a lot easier. I think it's also important to understand that we are really not working on deprecating planning analytics on cloud. Our delivery strategy for features, enhancements, improvements to the product are being targeted to all 4 of these offerings, right? So even if you don't plan to modernize, you're still going to see value being added to Workspace and PA for Excel every single month that we release an update to the software as well. That being said, we do have customers who are putting in the work to fully modernize to get to the SaaS offering, right? And this is because they see the advantages in the future in the SaaS offering, right? They see the advantages of being able to do service-to-service integration. They have requirements that are pretty strict around things like high availability of not just the TM1 databases, but all the services within the infrastructure, which is part of what Planning Analytics SaaS gives you. And then they also like things like the improved disaster recovery SLAs that Planning Analytics SaaS can offer because of the modernized architecture, right? So I think it's fair to say there really is no clear-cut answer right now. It sort of depends on your objective. If your objective is just to kind of move to an IBM managed infrastructure, Planning Analytics on cloud is a great choice. If your objective is really to modernize because you kind of understand the real value of modernization of the solution, Planning Analytics SaaS is the more likely target in that case. So it's not, like I said, not clear-cut, but I mean, there's a lot to consider either way.
And I guess earlier, I made the comment, I should be careful with my words. One of the trends I see in the US, that's how I'll rephrase it, is people going to cloud, going to hosted services. So you have and obviously the Cubewise is a global company, but my role is primarily focused around the US. Obviously, we have some global customers, so I do see a few other things. But from your perspective, are there any larger global trends that you see, whether it's out of Europe, Asia versus the US?
Yeah, 100%. So the biggest one to talk about is, and probably the most, if you look at kind of our growth of customers, it's planning analytics as a service in Azure data centers in EMEA. That there tends to be a strong preference. I don't know exactly why that is historically, but we definitely see pretty strong growth there, right? At the same point, I will kind of fess up and say, planning analytics SaaS, at this point, it's been some of our smaller customers, on premise who have moved, right? Because for them, the effort to move with the help of the proper business partner wasn't a lot of effort at all. It was a pretty quick and easy thing. For some of our bigger customers who have terabytes worth of TM1 models, we know the effort is going to be much larger to go to planning analytics SaaS. So, while they're planning for it, they know that they're going to end up executing on that sort of activity 2 or 3 years down the road. So the only clear trend really is Azure in EMEA in terms of a preference. And a lot of that probably due to regulation, not kind of EMEA being a little bit slow in some ways to adopt SaaS offerings, a little bit stricter regulations and preferences for the compliance and auditability of Azure as a platform over IBM Cloud or AWS.
It's a good call out. We've seen that ourselves as well with Azure and EMEA, and speaking to our colleagues in Belgium and Switzerland and Germany and the UK and the like. Again, around the regulatory environments, as it relates to that. I guess maybe I'm keen to get Nicolás's view on this as well, because you've done quite a lot of like those typical, I'm going to say like those typical kind of planning, big existing customers who are on Planning Analytics Local and moving them to the cloud and Planning Analytics on Cloud, which has been an excellent platform, and there's quite a lot of lessons learned there. So kind of keen to get some of your perspective there. But before going to that, I guess Stuart, for a customer who's kind of just landed in Planning Analytics on Cloud and is looking like, well, maybe Planning Analytics SaaS is the direction, obviously the eventual portability, from Planning Analytics on Cloud to PA SaaS, that's something that's on the roadmap about,
So we actually get this question a lot. So typically the question ends up being framed as, when am I going to get access to TM112 and Planning Analytics on Cloud? I think at this point, it's pretty clear that we're not going to do that. We're not just going to switch Planning Analytics on Cloud, which is really running, like IBM-owned data centers, over to TM112, right? Not that we don't want to do it. It's just not the most efficient thing that we could do for our customers or for ourselves. But what we are doing is we are actually building a migration path. So we're closing a lot of the issues, or focusing on a lot of the issues that we'd need to address in order to take a customer who's on cloud and get them over to the SaaS offering. I'll give you a quick example. Moving a Planning Analytics on Cloud customer to SaaS, it's not just moving the TM1 database, right? Of course, you could download all your TM1 database files. You could run the migration tool on premise and then upload the migrated TM112 database to Planning Analytics SaaS. Technically that's possible. It would be a bunch of work, right? But instead of forcing our customers to do that, what we're actually doing is working on baking the migration tool, the TM1 11 to 12 migration tool, into Planning Analytics on Cloud. Why? Because we want a customer to be able to select one of their databases, maybe in our administration user interface, and click a button that generates a TM112 backup of that database, the TM111 database in Planning Analytics on Cloud, to validate that the database can be migrated successfully, and then actually give them the backup set that they could potentially move over. We're going to do the same for the workspace component as well, right? So one of the exciting things that we're working on right now is the ability to do a backup and a restore of an entire Planning Analytics workspace environment. This means everything in the environment except the TM1 databases. So the user accounts, the folder structure, the books, the plans, the applications, the baseline forecast, if you use that feature, the user settings, basically everything, even the personal content. So we're building a feature that's going to allow our customers in Planning Analytics on Cloud, actually in any offering, on-premise, SaaS as well, to create a backup by clicking a button in the administration interface of the entire environment. Again, everything but the TM1 databases. We then want them to be able to grab that backup, to download it, or click a button that pushes it over to a Planning Analytics SaaS environment and restore it, right? And if we can do that for the workspace content in the TM1 databases, migrating them from 11 to 12 as we go, we can basically allow our customers to kind of test out or kick the tires of the Planning Analytics SaaS environment with their content, their models, their content, their data, and have them prove to themselves that, hey, my application, my solution does run in Planning Analytics SaaS. I think once we've achieved that, then we'll have the right to go to our customers and ask for permission to finally switch them over, right? But I think the point is we want to prove it. We want to allow our customers to prove it for themselves. So that's what we're actually focused on building, this kind of migration path that enables that.
So Stuart, it's almost like a proof of concept that they could do. Like once that utility is out there, that's, hey, let's go give this a try for a little bit. Hey, it's working. We're good. We can move on. That sounds like magic almost. But obviously, I know
it should feel like magic if it works. Yeah.
Or glide path.
A glide path. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Timelines. I know that's always a little, but like, are we thinking? Is this not far away, a little further down the horizon?
Yeah, so not too far away. So today, if you wanted to run the TM111 to 12 migration tool in Planning Analytics on Cloud, we do have it available. We haven't released documentation that explains how to do it, and we haven't provided a kind of easy to use interface, but there is a sort of hidden mechanism that any of our Planning Analytics on Cloud customers could use today in order to actually test, converting their TM1 database from Planning Analytics on Cloud to a TM112 format. Of course, a lot of them couldn't do anything with the backup that it generates, but they might be interested to see the report that gets generated, because the report will tell them if there's any problems that they need to consider changing the name of things like views and subsets, or if they need to go and potentially modify some turbo integrator code. The migration tool also handles that, right? The workspace part of this, being able to backup, restore, import, export a whole workspace environment, that is really a short-term objective, right? That's something that we're expecting to get into the product, into all versions of Planning Analytics Workspace for all 4 of these releases by the end of the first half this year. It probably won't be until the second half this year that we work on the automation to take these things that get generated, either the backup or the database, migrated database, and kind of automatically get them spun up in a Planning Analytics SaaS environment. I think that'll happen a little bit later this year, but it's definitely in scope for our roadmap in 2026.
Yeah, that is notably great to hear. Again, as a signal to people on the line and kind of watching the recording, these are really good investments in the product technology, right? As it is evolving and maturing, and within the IBM data and AI portfolio. So if as someone who's worked in this space for a while, the continual investments and kind of like, as you said, to the glide path to Planning Analytics as a service, as the modern version 12 deployment option with all of those great extra features. I guess considering that, looking at it, if you are on-prem or on the cloud, being aware of it, and speak to your Cubewise or your local business partner or IBM to kind of further that discussion. And I know, Nicolás, for yourself, you've done kind of quite a few Planning Analytics local to Planning Analytics Cloud and SaaS kind of migrations, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the kind of like lessons learned that, and Andrew as well, like, yourself as a account manager of some of these things, what are some of the lessons learned that you can share about some of those migrations, right? Because we've done countless number of those now, and they're really, there's a bit of a difference between what it was, 3 years ago to now in terms of the execution, right? But yeah, like Nicolás, maybe what are some of the top 3 things that you think people need to be mindful of or preparing for before those cloud migrations?
So it's a good point. I mean, what we've seen generally is all the points where we have a new project that envisions this is generally related to integrations, most likely. Those are the key points that we try to look, like how deep integrated your current on-prem TM1 application is with the rest of your enterprise ecosystem. Like if you have like batches from Oracle or or Oracle GL, or if you have to export things somewhere else, those are going to be the key things that you need to watch out for. If you send emails to like a local SMTP provider, et cetera, like those kind of pieces are relatively, actually, depending how nested it is, could be quite significant. That's like a good reason for Atmosphere. That's how was actually we thought about it when we started working in these migrations, because it helps bridge that gap when it comes to integrating cloud to cloud or even cloud to local. Your reports, yes, those reports that you had, especially depending on how old your instance is, if you have those reports that like those 30 megabyte workbooks with like 35 sheets that use a ton of VBRW formulas, start taking a look at those. Because as what you're going to get on IBM Cloud is, of course, a super beefy server as we're used to, and it's super responsive. But you're going to have to add the network now between your prepared report and your local notebook and where the IBM server is. So try to optimize those. Doing that, we did with multiple customers. Like actually, Pulse now has a dashboard for specifically that for workbooks, so you can see like what are the workbooks that spin up the most amount of threads that take forever locally, so you can grab them, knock the user and say, hey, why are you using this 50 megabyte report that initiates 10,000 threads for 2 hours, and then you go and tweak those pieces. So that's important because that's what the user is going to see. One of the key things we always get from customers is, hey, if I move to the cloud, what I'm going to see, right? Like, what are the performance pieces? So it's really important that you start addressing those. Another one is running, for example, Optimus Pi. Before that, that's always something we suggest. This is going to, if you haven't already, it's going to reduce the size of your application, and maybe what you need to get in terms of server is less, or you can have more room than you thought you would have. So maybe you can run more applications. That kind of, those are probably the things that we've been working on, and where we went and actually, made these small changes, like an application to handle this, a script to do that. If you have an orchestrator process like Airflow, Control M, how can you connect? Those are all the pieces that we keep in mind. And for the V12 specifically, one of the main things we've been like, when we get these questions, hey, should we move to V12, V11? And that's what I think, sort of echoing what Stuart's saying. Generally, our advice is, hey, like if you're already in V11, like in an IBM cloud, and you have these terabytes of instance, try to do a POC. Like, maybe don't put your big or small data. Try small, like, because as everything, it's still TM1 on the back end, but maybe you have a division that wants to is interested in planning analytics. Do a POC with them. Start acquiring that and do those small projects that will give you an idea of how it works, an idea on the performance, and then you can get, as IBM, as Stuart is saying, like, they will develop this migration tool to work the magic from a V11 to a V12. It's going to give you a good feeling on what V12 does.
Yep. And I think just to kind of comment on that is, I think really good integrations. Yeah, you're going to as part of the cloud migration, you're going to be very much have that in scope. Obviously, my integration, security. The how legacy is your perspectives or Pathé workbooks. Yeah, I think that's that can be a quite deep conversation, that one there. And I think, as you said, we've seen as much as you can modernize on where you are before moving to the cloud, it just reduces the risk profile of the cloud project, right? So, and Andrea, do you have any kind of comment on that?
Well, one thing I'd say too, just even high level, which is sometimes easier said than done, do an inventory of the assets that you have. Like, how many workbooks do you really need to modernize, or are they all still being used? And then too, James, what you were saying around, depending on how old of a version you're on, modernizing on-prem removes a few variables. So it's like a skip before you maybe go to cloud. And we have seen that, more successful. Whereas if you're, like I said, on that older version, modernize on-prem, kind of get that working, then it really does become that lift and shift to cloud. So that is something that we've seen over and over again of where that success, because you can run into a few more bumps if you're going from something really old to go to cloud, because then when it comes to troubleshooting, there's a few more things to be looking into.
100%. Yeah, I just want to echo that. I mean, it's so good to get past perspectives and to get into planning analytics for Excel. If you're sticking with Excel before you modernize, before you go to SaaS or planning analytics on cloud. So I fully agree with that. The other thing that I heard you say, James, which is I just wanted to echo, was the point around atmosphere, right? Or sorry, I think Nico, you kind of said you have to look at data sources, right? That's especially true when you're going to planning analytics SaaS, right? Because one of the things that planning analytics SaaS removes, right, is the ability to set up ODBC data sources directly on the system where TM1 databases are running. So we do have our ODBC data connector piece, which is a customer managed component to support kind of legacy ODBC data sources. But the way that the solution with Atmosphere works is just so much more slick and kind of cloud native that really fills in kind of a gap that we had within planning analytics SaaS that still exists today. Obviously, a gap that like IBM also wants to be able to kind of address more natively within the product. But Atmosphere is a really key piece to to being able to kind of continue to leverage, especially like cloud native data sources as you move to planning analytics SaaS.
Appreciate the call out there. And yeah, that importance that, cloud to cloud, cloud native, as you're saying, that integration. And as we often talk about at Cubewise, that performance of that integration, the performance of that data movement is, is critical because it's a part of building the trust with the users, right? The faster the data can move, the better typically the better the user experience, right? Because you don't want users sitting there complaining about planning analytics data not being available, complaining about poor report performance, right? It's as elegant and as amazing your model is, if the end user experience isn't performant and functional, there's challenges. So there's a lot to unpack there about deployment options, and again, the big kind of recommendation is, I'd say, as we're saying, I think, I always say to customers, look at when your renewal is due, right? And kind of like think about that as a bit of an anchor to be considering your cloud discussions with IBM or your business partner. I think, because that's kind of a typical way, because there's a commercial aspect there around some of the licensing. Use that as an anchor. And be thinking, 12, 18 months out, right? Start thinking about the planning. As you said, thinking about, how do we kind of make the model lean? How do we modernize in our current state as much as possible before moving our workloads? And, considerations around integration, security, PAFE, and modernizing the application is key. And again, proof of concept, proof of values. I know at Cubewise, they're things we love doing with our customers, right? It's something it's really enjoyable to do, to iterate with customers and to show that value. But I guess moving on, I guess one of the other elements of today's presentation here, Stuart, and I see, and that is around the IBM Bob and the Team One MCP. So I know you were showing us in the technical preview for this some of the IBM Bob interactions. So it'd be great if you to like set it up, share a little bit about what is IBM Bob, what is Team One MCP, why is there a bit of excitement right now about this, because it is important. And you want to walk us through a few of the screens.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so MCP is actually a really exciting thing, and I'm going to say it's probably one of the things where I've seen our team kind of move the fastest in a long time to adopt a technology, right? Typically, I kind of hear about technologies or we have customers or partners asking about certain things like years before we actually build it. MCP has been incredible because, I think I heard about it maybe halfway through, 3/4 of the way through 2025. And in the current 2.1.17 release that we just got out the door for on-premise and planning analytics on cloud, or if you happen to be on PA SaaS, it's 3.1.4. We actually, for the first time, released MCP tools into the product. So if you're not familiar with MCP, it stands for Model Context Protocol. It's basically an emerging protocol or standard for AI tools to talk to other services. So while it's not AI itself, it's something that we've added into planning analytics, and it's added into every variant of planning analytics, whether you're on premise or in the cloud or SaaS, to support AI-enabled tools to interact with planning analytics, right? So plenty of other tools like planning analytics have MCP tools as well built into them. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to share my screen here. And what you're actually looking at on my screen is IBM Bob. So IBM Bob is sort of the next generation of previous IBM Watson Code Assistant. So it's not a product by my team. We have a separate team in IBM that builds this tool called Bob. And typically Bob is aimed at developers. For those of you, who kind of recognize the interface, you'll recognize it's just Visual Studio Code with an extension that leverages, IBM's AI capabilities, right? So the panel on the right-hand side is Bob. It's our kind of chat assistant built within the IDE in order to do all sorts of things. And actually, even within product management, even though I don't sit and write code, except for Turbo Integrator code, I've actually already started to leverage Bob to do things like help generate documentation. I've actually used it last week to help improve documentation. It's the first time we ever had kind of AI-generated docs. And just before anyone panics, we did validate that the documentation that was generated actually works. We gave it to an analyst to kind of work through the steps it generated to make sure everything's valid and made corrections, of course, because, we don't just trust what it generates, especially on complex technical topics. But very interesting to be able to start leveraging these sort of AI tools in our day-to-day job, right? So of course, the relevant point here is how could we leverage a tool like Bob as someone who's interacting with planning analytics kind of day to day. On the left-hand side, you can actually see the MCP configuration. So basically, it's an endpoint and some details to authenticate to an existing planning analytics SaaS environment. It's just a test environment that we have up and running that we use within product management and our development organization. But here we can start leveraging Bob to kind of interact with planning analytics through just natural language. So for example, we can say show a list of TM1 models. Should understand that a model is, really means a database, right? It is agentic in nature, right? So, I have it set to kind of auto approve what is happening, but here it actually gives me a list of TM1 databases. And if you take a look at the response, hopefully the Cubewise team here sees this, that when I tried this immediately before we started the webinar, it actually kind of gave a different form of listing the databases. It's an AI tool with an LLM behind it, right? So, we're not going to get the same response every time. We should get the same list of databases or TM1 models within the environment. But here it's actually kind of broken it up into different categories for whatever reason. I don't know why Bob decided to do that. But we can start to focus on a specific database. So we can say something like, let's work with the SData database. Okay, and we can approve this. It just asks for our approval to do something, to kind of use the MCP tools, right? So just by starting to talk about the SData database, it gives me some basic details about the database. Right here, we're getting a list of cubes from the database, right? Then we can ask questions like, tell me about the sales cube. While it's running, I'll mention that the MCP tools that we added into the last release are definitely limited, right? There's specific tools to do very specific actions also, and it's not necessarily just a wrapper for API endpoints to do something like get a list of dimensions in a cube, which is kind of what we're seeing here, or to get a list of cubes in a TM1 model. Right, so keep in mind some of the MCP tools that we're going to add are going to be a little bit abstracted, right? So let's say we wanted to do something like load data into a cube, we could envision an MCP tool that does that. We don't have that today, extract or import data via an MCP tool, but that's a kind of an example of what's on our short list in order to generate. The MCP tools that we do have at this point basically allows our AI tool Bob to explore the model. Do things like get a list of the TM1 databases, get a list of the cubes. Here I'm getting a bit of a description of the cube, and it even goes so far as to tell me what it thinks the cube is going to be used for, or how the cube could be used, kind of the purpose of the cube. And then finally, we can say, show me some data in the sales cube. And we'll see what it comes back with. It's probably going to go and find some data. Hopefully it doesn't find a intersection full of nothing. Chances are it'll generate some MDX that kind of represents a default view if there is, just because that's where data is likely to be found. But here we can see it's basically generating an MDX view. Again, it's agentic, so it asks for my approval. I could set it to auto approve if I just want the work to happen. But here we see it actually pulling data back from our planning analytics cube into our agentic AI tool. Right.
Just to jump in just for a second, if I could, to break your flow there. How would you and this is really I find this fascinating. Like, how would you kind of differentiate this between orchestrate? Because there's obviously earlier in the week we had a similar, from an outcome perspective, we had a similar kind of outcome being delivered where we had planning analytics and orchestrate in a chat widget. Steve was kind of interacting with the TM1 database in a similar way to how you're doing it here. So how would you kind of share that with people on the line about the differences, or maybe they're very similar?
They are very similar. That's it at the end of the day. So through Orchestrate, right? We're basically working with the Orchestrate team to build agents that do a lot of the same things that the MCP tools do, right? Why MCP is so important, though, is because it's emerging as a very popular standard, right? So Bob is one example of a tool that's MCP enabled. We're going to start seeing a lot of other tools show up, or we've already seen some of our customers show up with MCP enabled tools. that are looking to build the connection, right? So again, agentic AI or agents being built through watsonx Orchestrate, they could be, very similar to MCP tools at the end of the day under the covers, right? They may be exposing, things like very specific endpoints or something that's a little bit more abstract. In both cases, it's not just interaction points with TM1 that matter, right? So I think most of our kind of MCP tools right now have been, basically it's just a wrapper on a specific endpoint, like generate a query, pull back the data, get a list of cubes, get a list of dimensions in the cube. That's very trivial in some ways. Where the agents that we built, I think or the agents that we're building are more geared around kind of use cases. But of course, we can expose like more complex use cases in MCP tools as well. So at the end of the day, it's not that much different. It's just whether or not you want to leverage sort of a connection point into planning analytics through agents or through tools that are MCP enabled. And at the end of the day, I think really the plan is to kind of have 100% coverage, right? Anything you can do within planning analytics, whether it's something you do in TM1 or something you do in Workspace, is probably going to show up as both an agent and an MCP tool. So just an example of this, right? Just, in case anyone here is very kind of TM1 centric, right? Planning Analytics Workspace has a forecasting feature, and it also has kind of embedded capabilities to do things like, for example, AI-based variance analysis. Being able to leverage those capabilities through an MCP tool, is very powerful, right? Especially if you combine that with other MCP tools that are also going to talk to the TM1 database and other MCP tools that are going to interact with data in other services, right?
Right. And I think it's a really good point there. And about it's from a business perspective, obviously we're kind of getting nice and into the technical details here, and from a technology perspective, which is part of Innovation Week. But then if we speaking to our the VPs of FP&A or some of the end user community here, you can see here that they're delivering similar outcomes. It's just we're kind of getting there potentially differently. And again, that's that optionality for people, right? There's similar to the deployment options. It is good to have some of these options and to deploy. And proof of concepts, proof of values are a great place to start here on a few of these things.
It actually reminds me a lot of, in some ways, that the value of Python and TM1Py, right? I mean, one of the things that I think we didn't cover about TM1Py, right, is the fact that it just runs in Python. And the great thing about that is there is 1,000,001 libraries for Python, right? So as soon as you need to say, like I want to do TM1 plus something else, I want planning analytics plus some other capability, Python bridges that gap. An MCP tool is no different than that in some sense, right? Maybe this is kind of exposed to more of a developer role, but the value point becomes not just that I can interact with things in planning analytics, but I can combine that through my chat assistant with other things in general, right? I'll give an example. Actually, I'll tell you about the first time I ever opened up Bob, and my manager forced me to do it. Very insistent. Like learn AI, go find an AI tool. And of course, I think a lot of people are kind of hesitant at first till they see a bit of magic happen where they're like, oh, wait, like I can do that? I can do that. The first time I ever used Bob, it was to generate some turbo integrator code. Now, we don't have an MCP tool yet to generate TI code. So like I did have to generate TI code and then kind of copy and paste it over to my TM1 database. Once we have the MCP tool, we can just generate some TI code and run it directly from Bob, which is going to be really cool. But the TI code that I generated, I actually gave it a sort of what I thought is a non-trivial challenge. Create a dimension, write some TI code that creates a dimension where the dimension has multiple levels. It's a calendar dimension that has quarter, months, weeks, and days, right? Now, if you think about this task, it might seem like a simple task when you say it, but it's actually kind of complex because you have to go and look up like how many days are in each month. I can never remember, like, is this year 28 days for February or what?
Sure.
Right? But the nice thing about doing something like that from something like Bob is Bob can just go figure out that there's 28 days in January this year for you. And it can write the TI code that's going to generate that dimension appropriately, right? So to me, it's like anytime that you have to kind of go outside of, the tool and go look something up, right? If you're just going to type it in Bob and Bob has access to, to all of this other information, other services, other data sets, right? You can start doing things with that in mind that end up being, very beneficial and very time saving to the user, right?
I think that's
by the way, my TI code, it didn't work 100%. It first missed the name of a function, and then it didn't understand the difference between the metadata and data section. A little bit of finesse was required, but really, really close. So
that's a really good example there. And I think, I guess similarly for ourselves here at Cubewise, kind of using, some of the AI tools for our developments, like life cycles and things like that, of finding different use cases and in trust but verify. Obviously you're going to get responses, and the other kind of thing I find quite exciting about this space right now is the productivity benefits. Right. So yes, there is a value in it going off and doing that manually in that what you mentioned there, but being able to use the tooling or finding ways to use the tooling as a productivity benefit, so you can add more value to your internal customers, to your external customers. I think personally, it's a real critical trend in terms of being able to equip ourselves as knowledge workers to use the AI tools to accelerate our productivity on that front. Now, I know we're kind of coming. Go for it.
Oh, I was going to say I agree on that. The other thing I've seen Bob do really, really well when I use it to generate TI code is it writes the comments for me. I think our developers, they don't trust my development of TI code because I'm always too lazy to write comments. But with Bob, the problem's sort of solved for you, right? As it generates the code, it can generate the explanation of the code and add it as comments. So little things like that, right? I mean, it is productivity. It takes away the nuisance of kind of day-to-day work. Let's just focus on what really matters.
Yeah, some of that higher value things. And it's really well said. We do have a couple of questions here in the chat. Stuart, some of them are down your lane. There we have another Stuart. Big shout out to Stuart Barnes there for some of his questions here. I'll set it up here. His second question is, are the same restrictions with the IBM cloud mitigated with the containerization solutions where you are able to run executables and batch files or VBS scripts within the container?
Yeah, the point of containers is you can't run anything within the containers, right? They're intended to be run very securely, right? Like the improvement of the security posture of the overall solution is a benefit of containerization. But that being said, there's actually some really important things outside of planning analytics to sort of look at when you're talking about running things like VBS script or Python script or any sort of code that's your code, right? The thing I'd start with is things like serverless services, right? So if you're on AWS looking at things like Lambda, those services are designed to run your own code very cheaply. And then we can actually build integration points that will like call your code on AWS Lambda from TM112, from like our turbo integrator scripting capabilities that are enhanced in 12. It requires a little bit of rethinking. The short answer is no, like we don't allow you to add your own code into planning analytics SaaS, where like it is kind of possible if you know what you're doing in planning analytics on cloud, but there are better solutions to allow you to continue to run scripts if that's really what you want to do.
Got it. Okay, nice, thank you. And there's another question out here that says, hey, is Bob able to create MDX code for setting a subset for a dimension in preset views for general users? Do you see that as a use case?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll caution to say through MCP tools, we can only do what TM1 can do, right? So when I say like we're trying to build an MCP tool for basically everything you can do in TM1 and planning analytics, it's not going to enable anything that doesn't exist in the product today, right? So something like through API endpoints kind of presetting private views for users isn't really possible. Like we'd have to build a product feature and then expose it with an MCP tool. If you just wanted it to generate a view and end up saving a view that other users will see in the other client tools like Workspace or PA for Excel, yeah, absolutely, that should be possible.
Okay. And then there's another question here, Stuart, again down your lane. This one is there still a customer advisory board for planning analytics? And I know that maybe I'll let you answer that question there. There's also from our experience as well, there's I guess an online where you can kind of submit requests and we can kind of vote them up and down. But how are people kind of, I guess, interacting with your team from an advisory board perspective?
Yeah, we kind of lost track of advisory boards over the time, and I'll sort of escalate this point because I mean it would be really good to do advisory boards. I mean, I often get invitations from business partners and some of our bigger customers who set up groups, and I'm always happy to attend those events. Spend the day talking about the product, kind of showing some of the neat things that we're doing in the lab, and of course get feedback from our customers about what they want, their ideas and enhancement requests for the product, and better understand how they're using the product. So if you want that sort of thing, I mean, you're welcome to reach out directly. But like I said, I mean, we should probably figure out within the planning analytics team how to actually own some of those meetings and set them up, because they are quite popular. The other thing I'll mention is I think this year we haven't done an Ask Me Anything call yet. Right, so we're looking at getting those started back up. They kind of fell off the board when Mike McGeehan left our team last year. But we are intending to get them back up and running, so we can get our customers and business partners giving us direct feedback and poking us on the hot topics that they're interested in.
They're very well received. I know those Ask Me Anythings. I think maybe the other side of it is a bit of a plug for Tech Exchange this year, which will be in Atlanta. Where it's a great opportunity to speak to people like Stuart, to Tracy, to etc. at times, and others. As it relates to this, I know there's something which there's a great opportunity even there for that kind of discussion, either formally or informally there at Tech Exchange, which is I know it's a while away. It's in October, but still it's another great place to kind of get together. I'll say that. Excellent. Stuart, anything you want to kind of mention in closing here, as we're kind of we're a little bit over, but anything you want to kind of just mention in closing?
No, just thanks for having me. Always fun to do this. Anytime you want me to come and talk about TM1, I mean, I get paid to do it for a living. I'm always happy to do it. It's kind of in some ways a dream job for myself, right? If you like technology and you like talking about kind of one of the most interesting products in the world, it's good to be me. So anytime you want me here, always happy to to join, show you what's going on, talk a little bit about our product.
Excellent. Appreciate it. And thank you for the time and kind of the demo, and also kind of walking through, as you said, some of the deployment options with Andrea and Nicolás and myself today. And, it's kind of, shout out to, the Team One Pi and kind of the innovation that's happening there as a bridge, as you mentioned there, and kind of walking through some of the IBM Bob and kind of the Team One MCP. Again, there's a lot of detail and a lot of depth in these kind of topics, and this is meant to kind of show some directional kind of technology here, technical previews. And again, please do reach out to IBM, to Cubewise, or your local business partner to kind of help support those kind of conversations. We'd be love to talk to you. So on that note, I want to say thanks everyone for joining today's session. Tomorrow we wrap it up with Nicolás, Andrea, and Steve and myself as we dive very deep into RushTI 2.0. And that's going to be a really fantastic session. And again, these recordings will be shortly posted on to everyone who's registered, and then shortly on YouTube under the Cubewise channel soon. So again, thank you everyone. Sorry for going a little bit over, but I think it was well worth it. So again, thanks for that. Thanks for the high fives, and we'll speak soon. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much.